Ladies, good morning, good night, wherever you are. Good day. This is Reels podcast number 19, I think. We're gonna be 20 soon. Could you believe that we're about to be legal in like two more episodes? But tonight we have a special episode today, which one it is. And before we go any further, let's introduce our regular guest of co-host, and we have a special guest already in our midst. So let's start with Andreen from Solely Tennis Travel. I don't know why I keep saying channel. Like, you don't have a TV show, right, Andreen?
No, I don't. It's just tennis traveling. Oh, tennis
Okay.
travels.
Okay. And as always, we have Janina
Hello.
and Bridge P. Karen from The Spin is with us tonight, as always.
Hi, good night.
And special guest on myself reels. I forget that all the time. And I don't know why, but am I a nobody in this world?
Are you in you're already in your body, so you can feel it. It's all right.
Exactly. And talking about body, guess who we have this evening with us? We have New York Times freelance writer Ben Rothenburg, and he's here in a hailstorm of, tweets and emails and howlers. Did anyone send you a howler, Ben? Because from Harry Potter? 'Cause-
No, I haven't gotten any Harry Potter mail, but that's about the only thing I haven't gotten yet. I'm expecting the owl at my window any minute now.
okay. Just remember to open it right away, because if you keep it, it gets louder. You don't want to.
Right.
So we have Ben Rothenburg with us this evening.
Thank you guys for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much. We usually don't have a lot of guests, and
We'll see if you're happy at the end.
exactly.
I like to think that this is shelter from the hailstorm. Maybe, who knows, maybe I walked outside into something far worse.
No, there is some shelter here. You're in your own home. You're not in our studio, so you're at home. So it's not shelter at the very least.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about yourself, Ben, before we get into the real tea.
What do you want to know? What do you want to know?
Well,
How long you've been covering the tour? How'd you get into it? Just
Okay, sure. I mean,
background.
I've been a tennis fan really since I was about 10 years old. I was the first sort of match that I remember really getting into was in 1997 U.S. Open when Venus Williams was playing Irina Spirlea. And that match, I'm sure everyone knows everything about that match. And from that moment, I was pretty much hooked, especially on women's tennis, really, because at that point, the men were in a really boring phase of their history. It's a lot of serve bots. It was a lot of Sampras hitting 40 aces in a match and winning, and the women had.
Shit about Sampras, don't you? You see, you're about to get a hailstorm already. Don't you say shit about Sampras?
That's fine.
Sampras and his eyebrows are king in my world. Okay.
Okay, that's fine. but for me, no, it was about that time. I mean, like you mentioned, the education before. I mean, there was so much good stuff happening in those next 5 years that happened on tour, all the way through Venus showing up at the U.S. Open to the Serena Slam. Everything that happened in between there and from then on, it was really a peak of women's tennis, I think, and it was for me impossible not to get caught up in the personalities and the game of everything of it. I went up to the U.S. Open. I live in D.C. I went up to the U.S. Open a few times for the final weekend Super Saturday. Saw Venus win twice, and then two Williams sister finals that they split. So that was how I got into the sport originally, and then as I finished skipping ahead, got out of college and figured out that I needed a job and liked writing and liked tennis, I eventually figured out to connect the two. Well, it took a lot longer than I probably should have. And I've been covering it. I had my own blogs first, and now I've been covering it as a freelancer, but mostly for the New York Times. About 90% of the stuff I do is probably for them since 2011 U.S. Open. So coming up on 4 years.
Okay.
So you're living your dream?
Yeah, no, it's been great. It's a job that obviously I'm not in it for the money because the newspaper writing industry is shrinking and fast, but so it's not a solid career path that I feel like I'm gonna have shelter over my head forever to talk about shelter. But I couldn't. It couldn't be much more fun in terms of getting to write and be creative while following a sport that I still love and athletes who I have an incredible amount of respect for.
Because here at Reels, we're always about the pocketbook. We're always talking about the money. So are you on the scrub? Are you on the scrub diet? Are you like? Are you and Sergey pitching meals together, sharing
Oh gosh. No, Sergey's saving up for his Ferrari or his Lamborghini, isn't he? I don't think he's going to spend any money feeding me. No, we're I'm doing fine. I'm not, this is not me holding out a tin cup and shaking it on the podcast. But
No. I wasn't thinking that because I'm just saying that you're right in terms of writers get paid next to nothing, and it's always a struggle fest for writers not getting paid their word at all, whether in newspaper or magazines or even writing an author in himself. It's always tough in publishing, these kind of in the creative field. So that's why I was saying that. What's your favorite event?
Favorite event? That's a good question. I mean, I like a lot of them for different reasons. Lazily, I like the Washington tournament because it's right next to my house and I don't have to go anywhere. I live only about just over a mile from it. I can drive there without hitting a single stoplight through the park, so that's pretty cool. But in terms of slams, Wimbledon's amazing. It's tough because everything happens at once because they spread all the matches out so much and play starts pretty late and there's no light, so everything's pretty condensed and you miss a lot. But the atmosphere and the sort of tradition of that tournament is awesome. So I was just there, so maybe I'm biased, but it's hard to beat.
Is that the Hunger Slam?
The what? The Hunger Slam. They actually gave us more money in the press restaurant this year, which was appreciated. It used to be definitely the Hungry Slam. They would give you only seven pounds a day for food, and which added up to like nothing, and you're there all day. And so I would get the strawberries, which are like 2 pounds, mix them in the yogurt, and like crumble up a granola bar to like convince myself that I was eating something substantial.
Was tea for free? Did they give you free tea, or you had to pay for that?
I guess they did have free tea. They had free hot water and tea bags, so that was
that's
there.
good. At the very least.
English would never deny you tea.
Well, Ben, I'm curious about just in terms of, say, for example, Wimbledon and covering it, because both you cover it and Christopher Clary covers it as well, right?
Yeah,
How
we
does
had a third person there too, actually, David Waldstein, who was there. We usually have me and a Chris Clary and a staffer who rotates in. From the general sports reporting staff, and David Waldstein is that. So I'm sort of the third wheel a lot of times at the Grand Slam. Sometimes on Australia, usually there's only me and Clary, so has been only me and Clary a few times, so I'm the second wheel. But being third wheel, for me, I like it a lot because usually whoever the staffer is, like David did a lot of game stories and result stories. Chris does his columns, which are more on the sort of main players, in terms of, he'll write about what Novak is bouncing back in the French, or Serena's slam ambitions, or Federer's, doing what he does, trying to win one last one and being so good at his age. And that leaves me to be more creative. I have to go sort of outside the box and come up with ideas that are so popular in the world, like writing about female tennis body issues. But no, I really like that part of the job. I've been at tournaments where I was doing more result stories and was theoretically higher up the ladder. But it wasn't as much fun. It wasn't as creative or as satisfying for me, I guess.
So let's dig into this piece. Tell us how it came about. We listened to your podcast and we heard that it started in Rome. So how did it come about for you?
I was doing most of the reporting in Rome. I had the idea before that, but I was doing most of the talking to players in Rome because it's a tournament where there's no transcripts and you can get stuff access is pretty good and keep compile material pretty well there, and player access is good, especially for the WTA. There's less focus on them there than there is the men. But I talked to Thomas Viktorovsky about this issue. I talked to him not even about this, about working with Aga. It was just after she had beaten Azarenka in the Australian Open last year, and so they were all on cloud nine. They were so happy, and I talked to her about him about challenges of coaching someone with Radwanska's skill set, because she has weapons that no other player does and lacks weapons that most other players have. And so just sort of the challenge of that, and he started talking about all the stuff that eventually was in the article. There was more to it than that, but that was obviously the sentiment that really stood out to me. And that sort of put the idea in my notebook. I always have like a running list of story ideas of, I could write about this, would be interesting to sort of explore that. And then this story idea came up, a while later, and started talking to female players about it more in Rome and getting some pretty interesting answers, I thought. And we decided to do it for Wimbledon. It was, a story that the editors were interested in for sure, because it was definitely something that was striking and surprising that these women would have these hang-ups that you might not expect for a female athlete to have, and you might think that female athletes being as fit as they are, as confident as they are, wouldn't face the same sort of societal pressures that all women face. And the fact that they did, and that it did possibly affect their careers, I think was interesting to them. And so we did it, and had Radwanska at the start. Because we always try to make it somewhat relevant to the tournament that's going on. And so Radwanska was at the top of it, and then she lost in the semifinals. We were sort of holding it, thinking that we might get a Serena Radwanska final once that bottom half opened up in the draw. Came very close to that. Came one match away from that. And then afterwards, when it was going to come out after that, we reshuffled it a bit to put a Serena on top because she was the player still in the tournament, and moved on from there.
Okay, but just a little bit of background for me and our listeners. How did you frame it for the players when you sat down and talked to them? Yeah. What did you tell them the story was going to be?
I said it was a story about female athletes, training routines and any reluctance they had about bulking up. Any reluctance if they didn't want to look muscly. It was really pretty narrow, everyone talking about themselves. And
wow, so it was pretty straightforward. You were like, this is what it is, this is what I want.
Oh, completely. I was not trying to trick anybody into anything. And I think I'm glad that you asked that, because that's one question or one thing I think got misinterpreted in the article, when obviously my job as a writer is to communicate things clearly. So a lot of that failure falls on me, is that people thought that I was asking other players to weigh in on Serena, that I was saying, hey, what do you think of Serena's body, just because she came first in the article, I guess. And that wasn't the case at all. Everyone I talked to was just talking about themselves and their own, feelings about it. And some of them had no problem with it at all. Some, you saw in the piece you talked about, there's a big range of ways that the players chose to address this.
Did you talk to anybody who didn't make it into the article?
Oh, yeah, quite a few people. No, I talked to probably, I'm not sure how many made it in the article. I probably talked to about 15 or 16 different women players about this. A lot of them were sort of less known names, and so if they said something that was pretty much the same as something who's a more prominent name, I would use the more prominent name. Even like two players actually, Victoria Azarenka said almost the exact same thing as Caroline Wozniacki did. She talked about, if she wanted to be a model afterwards, she could, lose some weight, and that'd be fine. And so it didn't make sense to have two people saying the exact same thing. And Caroline's was just worded a little bit more cleanly, so I used her. But yeah, no, I always over-report things. I think I always so I have like this document of like 6,000 word transcript I have to narrow down into however like 1,000, 1,400 word piece, whatever it wound up being. So I always get too much and then have to whittle down.
Hi, good night. Hi, Ben.
Hey, Karen. How you doing?
I'm good. Let me just echo the sentiments of my co-host and welcome you to the Reels Tennis podcast.
Thank you, Karen.
I looked at the article a bit differently than my co-hosts, as I know we haven't touched on the issue of race yet, and I'm glad you looked at that you brought up exactly how you first broached this topic with the women. Is it that you were looking at it from a fitness perspective, i.e., your workout routines? How do you get better? Was the intention of the article and the intention of the questions one that would talk about the women's fitness routines, how to use their, whether bulking up or not bulking up or having a different training regimen would actually help them to get better? And I say this and ask this because of Maria's comment, Sharapova's comment, in which she said about not can't lift more than 5 pounds, and her past comments about Serena, and Serena's game and why it bothers her. I guess the word I'm looking for is the juxtaposition of the beginning of the article and the comments. Did you approach it when you spoke to these women, even those who were not mentioned in the article, as to whether or not it was a fitness issue, getting better by being fitter, so to speak?
Yeah, no, I talk players. I asked that basic question. Obviously, I didn't phrase it identically word for word the same way every time because it was 20 separate conversations. But generally, I asked the players if bulking up and being perceived as being too bulky, looking too muscly was something they were worried about. And some of them answered it first by talking about, their tennis and how they said bulking up would slow them down. how, I mean, one thing Sharapova says, which is, after the sort of comment about, not being able to lift 5 pounds, one thing she says is she doesn't think adding muscle would help her tennis, which is possibly fair. I mean, she already hits the ball plenty hard. If that's how she chose to answer it, fine. And then other people, if they answered it that way, then I would sort of talk to them more about the sort of perception of it, the body image part of it particularly, and how much that played into their thinking as it affects their fitness. But this was more about the sort of stigma of it than the effectiveness of muscle. It wasn't about, even though there were people who answered it that way and parts of those comments were in there, it wasn't just about training regimen. It was more about how they feel about the training regimen, how, psychologically, how they balance the physical side of the game and, their thinking about themselves as society perceives them, with all the pressures that are put on women, and if that affects their training, I guess.
So
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was about. So did you use Aga's coach's comment as a kind of inspiration for this piece? The notion that he said that being muscular was on some level unfeminine. Is that what you?
It was the way that he treated femininity as being a concern in Aga's training regimen. And I think really set me off. It wasn't the mindset so much. It was just that the fact that it actually seemed to, as her coach, wasn't like she was saying this herself, but as her coach, he has a huge influence on shaping her training and shaping her career. And the fact that he saw this societal concern of what a woman looks like, as part of it, I think was what made me really think this was a story that affected the game possibly.
I'm having one of my moments.
Okay.
And this is just idle speculation on my part, and you can feel free to say no comment. But could it be that this is the reason why the Martina Radwanska coaching relationship did not work? Because as we know, when Martina was losing to Chrissy Evert, she got fitter. Yeah. She became stronger in order to last with Chrissy on the court. Could it be that Martina was trying to get that going with Radwanska, but this was vetoed by her coach?
That's a tremendous question, and one I don't have no comment for it, but I don't have a definitive answer. I tried to reach out to Martina for this story and just never got a hold of her a couple times. She's usually really busy with various obligations.
You should stay after her for that, because that would be a really, really interesting follow-up.
She can just be awesome to track down. Yeah.
I have a question I want to. Well, in terms of Viktorovsky, it's interesting because there was a Polish translation. I don't read Polish, folks, but there was a translation of an interview he gave where he was admonishing Radwanska, stating that she wasn't bulking up, and he was trying to get her to gain weight.
Yeah,
and
I saw that too.
And she was losing weight, in fact, instead of gaining the weight that he wanted her. And he also even admonished her, saying that there are shots that she hit that were part of her junior career that needed to stop, and she needed to change, but she's so set in her ways, and this was problematic. So when I read this quote, I thought, wait, I'm sorry, am I is he bipolar? And because to me,
he can have it both ways. You can. I mean, lots of people have contradictory parts of themselves and say things at different times that reflect what their thinking is at that moment. I mean, I talked to him after she had just beaten Azarenka in the quarters of a slam. Azarenka was two-time defending champion, and so maybe he was.
This was last year.
Yeah, so
last year, 2014, January.
Yeah. So it's possible at that time he was feeling, pretty good about her game and where she was, and then this year she starts losing everything, and he starts saying, no, there's a problem here. I mean, different. That's how I read, I guess, the sort of contrast. I mean, different people.
Okay, so this quote about, because first of all she's a woman and she wants to be a woman, is from 2014.
Yeah.
Okay, and my other question I think I had when you got to, as you were doing the interview process with all these women, two things, I guess. Were there any discomfort from them speaking to a man and about these issues, about their, I don't want to say, when I say issues, that they had an issue with their body, but just in terms of
they do have issues with their body.
Yeah.
But but I mean in terms of I mean, some of
No,
these women.
I understand. I understand what you're saying. I think that I didn't sense any of that, honestly. I'm around the tour a lot. I focus on WTA a lot more than most writers, definitely more than most male writers. I mean, really, I've been to so many press conferences where it's just me and Courtney in there talking to a lot of these women, even at big tournaments like Rome. And so the women who I spoke to, I've talked to, double-digit number of times, with the exception of Heather Watson, who I actually don't know that well, but she said interesting things about this and was very relaxed and very comfortable. I have a good rapport with them, and I think they were willing to open up to me in a way that they might not have to someone who is a stranger asking these questions. I like to think.
Another question. I mean, and it's going to sounds rather sexist, but did you think that as a man that you were able to hone in on the sensitivities of as a woman to discuss these issues or get at the right questions as you are a man? That you think you were knowledgeable enough to know to really handle this piece?
I like to think so. I do. I mean, obviously people who are different places in society have had different life experiences and would come with this issue entirely different way. I mean, they're women might have focused different parts of the piece differently. Black women might have focused different parts of it differently. Talking about what Serena, what she represents in terms of how her body has been talked about, and all the good and bad that's been said about it. And there's so much over the course of her career. I mean, this sort of things that people have said, it ranges everything. And so people would frame it in different ways. And the way that I came at it, I tried to do with as much respect as possible and keep it sort of in my lane, in the lane that I was trying to go to, which was very specific for me in my thinking about it, which was how women approach bulking up and the stigma of that with this perceived female body image that society has sort of thrust upon them. And other people might have stopped and gone different ways with it, or taken swerves into other lanes, talked about race, talked about associations with homophobia, and what it looks like to be a manly looking woman on the tour. And that I understand all of that, but for me, I guess I didn't feel. No, to answer your original question, I didn't feel unworthy, I guess, of touching this topic.
Unqualified, I think.
Unqualified, yeah, sorry.
So then, Ben, I think what's interesting then is, given that was your intention, do you think you succeeded in that piece then?
I was supposed to ask that.
So we're all on the same track.
Do I think I succeeded? I'll say I will say for me, I think I did. I'm happy with the piece I wrote. I understand that other people. I understand that other people would have written it differently. I understand that completely. It's not all things to all people, and I've been talking to people of reactions to negative reactions. I've talked to anyone who's sort of willing to get on the phone with me in the industry, trying to get different perspectives on why people had different problems with it. I talked today to Elizabeth Newman, who's a writer and tennis editor at Sports Illustrated, and a black woman about the issues she had, saying it was body shaming Serena. And I've been trying to understand perspectives. I talked to Howard Bryan, who's a friend of mine, who's also black, from ESPN, and talked to him about the issues he had, and him saying that whenever you mention Serena's body, you have to go into race. You have to touch all those issues. You have to contextualize it and how it's been different. I've talked to Christy Treadway, who's a local person in DC who's in a lot of tennis. She's a PhD student and lecturer on the sociology of women's sports at the University of Maryland. And I talked to her about the sort of feminist side of the issues and complaints people had about that. I understand that other people would have done about it other ways, but for me, I was trying to do it with as little judgment as possible. Like, that's the other thing that people have said. I didn't condemn Viktorovsky, what he said in the quote, in that quote.
Well, that's not your job to condemn people with their quotes.
That's what. Yeah.
And I remember in the podcast you talked about being blindsided by all of the racist comments that came up, and to me, that the way that I took that, I was like, I totally get it, because I mean, you can tell me if that's not who you are, but I took it as that's who you are, that you don't necessarily see color in everything that you do.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't see everything through a lens of race the way other people do.
But given a piece like this, in and especially knowing what you know now, having, had other people tell you when you talk about Serena, you have to talk about race because the two just go hand in hand. But did you never think before that it was your responsibility to think of how people are going to interpret your piece? Do you not think about that? Do you not think that you should think about that? Is it kind of like, here it is, take it for what it is and run? Or...
Yeah, I think that if I start worrying about how people are going to react to my stories, that's a disservice to me and to them on some level.
Okay.
I'm not trying to be all things to all people. This wasn't going to be a perfect piece because this issue, like I said, I was trying to sort of stay in my lane. I understand maybe people think that this issue is so big that it's impossible to keep in one lane. It's going to start sideswiping cars in every other lane along the way, and that it's not addressing things. But for me, this was what I was trying to do. And if people want to take this piece and use it as a conversation, talk about Serena, or use it as a conversation, talk about perceptions of femininity and why this body notion of just one beauty standard is ridiculous, or want to talk about masculinity, homophobia, whatever, or go in a completely different direction and take an exit ramp off into talking about over-sexualization of women's bodies and Hottentot Venus and objectifications of black women throughout history. That's all great. For me, I was just trying to say what it is and how it is and the reality these women face on tour, not anything about how it should be or even a history of it. I wasn't trying to give any sort of history lesson in this piece, and maybe that's to its detriment. Maybe I should have gone into comments about Martina Hingis saying she was playing half a man against Amelie Mauresmo and the other sort of stigmas about that.
Actually, for me, go ahead, Andreen, because...
Well, I'm just saying, I'm going to say this and then please come back in, Karen. I think one of the things that I think it's important, though, Ben, is that even though you say that you are just trying to sort of stay in your lane and you wanted to kind of just deal with what is, but what is involves intersectionality. Do you know what I mean? It involves, because Serena's pressures are going to be different than Aga's pressures. I mean, just from even culturally. Yeah. So, so to be able to have, to be able to sort of give that kind of context, because I get it. In limited space, I don't think anyone is expecting a treatise, right? No one's expecting a treatise on history. But in some ways, to be able to kind of look at these, because at the same time, you're trying to deal with them as athletes and women at the same time, too. So you're dealing with that intersection. Because to be honest, if you had just done that piece and Serena was not in it, there might have been some sort of, a little bit of hoopla around it. Oh, I'm uncomfortable with some of the things that people say. But once you added Serena in the piece, it really took whatever your intentions were completely off the rails.
I completely agree with that, and like I said, I completely agree with seeing how people see that adding Serena as a whole lot more, and that race becomes an issue that it wasn't before. And by thinking about the piece and writing it, and like I said, I think on the podcast, my podcast originally, I had written the piece before with Aga Radwanska on top and Serena sort of in the middle. And I think that if I had come out this as originally as a story about Serena, I would have reinforced the framing of it with a lot more discussion of how she's been talked about, how the pressures she faces in terms, but good and bad. I mean, because like I said, I was at the 2002 U.S. Open final, sitting in the upper deck with my dad, and I remember the reactions when she came out in the cat suit every time. I mean, I know that Serena draws an incredible level of praise. It's not all racist columnists comparing her to a lion on the savannah or whatever. I get that, and I've seen both sides of it, and I wasn't thinking when I did it that having Serena need to be treated any differently than other players, and I understand that now, especially putting Serena on top. This story needed to be more renovated than it was with changing.
It's the juxtaposition, Ben. It's the juxtaposition. I'm reading it again. And it says, Williams, who will be vying for the Wimbledon title against Garbine Muguruza on Saturday, has large biceps and a mold-breaking muscular frame, which packs the power and athleticism that have dominated women's tennis for years. Her rivals could try to emulate her physique, but most of them choose not to. ellipsis, dot, dot, dot. Right down the bottom, it's our decision to keep her as the smallest player in the top 10 because, first of all, she's a woman and she wants to be a woman. You know what I got from that? I didn't get race. I didn't get sexism. I didn't get any of the usual catch-all phrases that seem to permeate conversation surrounding women's bodies. I love the word WTA, and if you've ever read any of my blog pieces,
Oh, sure, I have, yeah.
yeah, it's always about the WTA and the fact that they've been disrespected for so many years. And one of the things that I got from that is just an article that it's as if the players were criticizing Serena's body. I don't want to look like her. And I was driving to work, and that's what came through my mind. I was like, oh my God, it's the juxtaposition of the article. And I think that's what has a lot of people who can't really, who see only race. And I'm from Jamaica, so I don't see race. I see classism in everything that happens in life.
Okay.
So I don't see race in this, but I just see a situation where, where WTA, the women of the WTA, have always been described as a bunch of itches with bees who don't get along and who are always at each other's throats. And this article does nothing to change the mindset of the public out there at a time when the number one player in the world has a whole host of friends on tour that she goes out with and socializes with.
Sure.
This article was quite the juxtaposition. My favorite word these days. It's
the word of the day.
It's unfortunate. I don't know whether or not you plan to do a follow-up piece on it. Do you?
I don't have any immediate plans for a direct follow-up. Obviously, I'm going to keep writing about women's tennis and keep writing about issues it faces. In terms of doing, a sequel to this piece directly, that's not in my immediate plans. I know that we're looking into other stories that are related as a paper. I know that other people at the Times are now working on at least early stages of stories about female body athlete image. I don't know what direction they're going.
Let me jump in here for a second, though, because Karen, it's interesting. And it's interesting, as we talked about on our show before this, that, the four of us, we read this, and we all saw something different. In that piece part of the article that you just read, and you're like, I see this as an attack on Serena. But hearing you read those words, I think, damn, what a strong, powerful woman. That's how I hear it.
See, Ginia, I'm obviously inclined to agree with you, I think that, not that I would disagree with Karen at all, but because when people came out and said all these headlines like New York Times body shames Serena, and they use quotes saying she has a large biceps and a muscular frame, I'm thinking, when do those become bad things?
That's how I'm like, damn, like, rocket woman,
exactly.
And if you don't want to be like her, so be it. And here's where I'm at. If Agaradwanska doesn't feel feminine being more muscular, that is her choice, because whatever makes us as women feel pretty, then that's what you go with and that's what you run with. And nobody, I don't care who the fuck you are, gets to say that you are right and you are wrong. That's not the way it works.
Except it works within a context that musculature has always been a part of the definition of what's feminine for women. So the idea that, I think in some ways then it suggests that maybe you have a sort of insular view of the sport. When did that become a bad thing? It's always been a bad thing. That's been the challenge.
Yeah, it has, but I just wanted to point out that we both read something that, we all read the same words, and it meant something completely different to Karen than it did to me. And I just wanted to take a minute to point that out, because it wasn't negative for me. I did not feel like it was body shaming for Serena. I felt like it was putting her up on a pedestal.
Well, the problem is that for me,
when right below that, a player in the top 10 who says her coach says he wants this player to look like a woman.
Well, for me, it makes him look stupid, not an attack. That's just me. Because, I understand that it wasn't addressed.
I'm not saying that Ben is attacking. It's here's that word again. It's the
The
juxtaposition
women
of
are
the
saying it
article that
because
really has me wound up.
the title of the article says tennis top women balance body image with ambition. So it suggests that the women are basically saying, I'm not going to get, I don't want to use one word fitter, because I mean, Aga Radwanska could run me down any day. She can. Whether at 120 pounds or whatnot, she can outlast me on the treadmill, on the tennis court, and I go to the gym. But the point is that it sort of implies that that they're not gonna get better, I guess, fitter and muscular, I guess. And I don't know, when you say bulk up, did you mean that in terms of, in the pure sense of, did you feel that the I guess the women felt that it was getting more tone or getting bigger muscles, or you know was the implication, I'm not saying that they should use steroids, but did they feel that they were afraid of bulking up, people would accuse them of on steroids, etc.?
Steroids was not part. I mean, I guess that is not a completely unrelated topic. It wasn't part of my thinking in the question. But no, I was just bulking up to me purely meant getting bigger looking,
Okay. So
like
what
more muscly,
What
Right.
was it, what Ben, in general then, I mean you spoke to a lot of women and we had a lot of different perspectives in the piece, but what was your sense about overall the general
Well,
consensus of the
consensus,
women?
yeah.
Yeah, like when in answer to that question, what did your sample suggest to you?
Most of them, for most of them, it was not, a preoccupying concern. I would say. I mean, it was something that people had in the back of their minds. Almost all of them, and some more than others. I mean, it's a sliding scale. It's hard to say what the majority or average was because it was a spectrum. I mean, you saw even someone like Petkovic, who I don't think has necessarily curtailed her training to look a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Still has these insecurities about it. Still has discomfort seeing herself, looking huge, for lack of a better word, when she hits backhands in photos. And
Did it make
obviously,
you uncomfortable to hear them talk about themselves that way?
no, I mean honestly, no, because those were sort of the answers I was looking for in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So those were, I appreciate Petkovic. Obviously, I mean, people know I've known her well. She's been on our podcast a few times. So hearing her say that, first of all, I wasn't surprised because she sort of mentioned other things to me about girliness versus muscle and stuff. So I knew sort of where her head would be at on that issue.
No, but what I mean, like, as
okay.
you as a man looking at a woman,
Okay.
were you a little bit disappointed that she kind of felt unbeautiful because of the way her body looks sometimes? Or maybe you don't appreciate her body. I don't know. I mean,
No,
I'm just curious from a man's point of view. Did you think, like, damn girl, but you're really pretty, like you got a great body?
No,
I
I definitely did have that thought. I mean, Petkovic obviously is in incredible shape. She's an incredibly, I use the word attractive person. I mean, she's beautiful, and for her to have those doubts, and for me to sound like I'm singing a One Direction lyric, for her to not know that she's beautiful, it makes me sad. Obviously, it's part of the whole crux of the story is that these women.
So did you tell her?
Are, I don't think I actually broke away from the interview. No, actually, I did. Because, no, I did at the end because I knew someone specifically who always told me that like Petkovic was their like, what's their word? Like their body goal.
Yeah.
Like Petkovic was their fitness goal.
Mm-hmm.
This their squad goals were Petkovic, and so I told her that at the end, and she was like surprised. But and so
I'm glad you
that
shared
was
that
one.
with her.
Do you think that the women, the hesitancy of the women in bulking up has to do with the fact that, and I've seen pictures of Petco hitting her backhand, and I can understand why she would be hesitant about putting on more muscle. Do you think the hesitancy that women exhibited in muscling up, even though it might help or or aid their game or whatever, do you think it has to do with the allegations of doping that some of these that people speculate about a woman because she has muscles and that kind of thing? Were they concerned about that in any way?
No, honestly, no one brought up doping with me in their answers. Not a single person said, I don't want to look muscly because people will think I'm juicing. That wasn't something that came up. That's a fair question, but no, I did. That's not something anyone mentioned as one of their answers.
Was there any issue, talk of, I guess, like they don't want to be perceived as being less feminine, as well as perhaps allegation of homosexuality, that they might be lesbians.
No one took that particular tack. No, and again, no. People talk about being less feminine, but no one took the step further to saying they didn't want to be perceived as lesbian. No.
So when they said it didn't, so you had those who said, like Heather Watson said, they wanted to bulk up. Well, I don't want to use the word bulk up. That she has no problem looking muscly. Is that real word anyway? But
Well,
Yeah.
that-
Tone, I think.
muscle.
Yeah. Tone was the word she used.
but that was the context of the question, so you can
Right.
use muscle and bulk up because that's really the question.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you had people like Heather Watson, as you said, Azarenka and Wozniacki stating, we have no problem looking muscly because it helps our game, was
Yeah.
the opposite, where women said they didn't want to be muscly, and they didn't was their response, I didn't want to be muscly, so I don't care about my game, really?
No.
What was their reasons for not?
No one really explicitly said, I am sacrificing my tennis to look a certain way. No one came out and said it that directly. People, the most direct sort of admission that it was, something in their heads were Radvansky and Viktorovsky, who talked about it being a factor in their thinking. Although, Aga said also that she, as it says in the article, that she tried and wasn't going anywhere. Even if she'd wanted to, but there were those other concerns for her. But no one really said that it was outright they were trading one thing for they were trading femininity for better tennis.
So then what reason was, I just want to go back. So then the reason why the title of the article, because it seemed to imply that they were balancing whether or not they wanted to bulk up with whether or not with the idea it can help their game, with the ambition, because, and this is, I'm going to use, Karen, use your word, may I borrow, juxtaposition, because the article starts off with Serena being let's take race out of the whole equation here. Serena being the #1 player, she's winning everything, and then it says her rival could emulate her physique, but most of them choose not to.
Yeah.
That sort of implies that that this is where it goes back to the article, the title that said they're balancing body image with ambition, because Serena is very comfortable in her body. She's very comfortable with the well-defined muscles, and she's winning. She's putting in the yards, working out, etc., and she's winning.
Which is part of why I was so stunned when people thought the article was anti-Serena, because I have her in here being this woman who is proud of herself, secure in herself, and wins everything.
But like I said, but then Viktor Rotsky says, the first thing the quote says that it's our decision to keep as the smallest player in the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's the point? What's the question? What's the question you're asking?
No, but I mean, like, it does, when it comes to the anti-Serena, I can see that, because then of the juxtaposition saying, that there is Serena being #1, she's winning, she's fit, she's comfortable in her body, and he's saying, we don't want that.
Yeah.
But,
no, that's.
Yeah, but what? So are you saying that the women are not ambitious? Is that the question?
No, but I'm saying this is why the article title implies that they're not ambitious.
My article was more them talking about how these factors. It wasn't all about this body image perception necessarily hindering them.
Yeah.
It was about them finding a balance. I think it's a sort of conservative word here.
Well, I think we need to remember, too, that Serena only recently said that she's comfortable with herself. She talked about not being comfortable with herself, and she's kind of excited that her body image is now kind of the it thing.
Yeah, and I think the title of the article doesn't suggest that it's an end game. The title suggests that it's an ongoing negotiation. Right. That's the idea. So it's not as if the article title is suggesting that there's some loop around ambition and musculature. However, I think I wanted to get back a little bit to not so much the content of this article, but the New York Times' response, Ben. Were you at all involved with that sort of? It was characterized as an apology, but it really wasn't.
It wasn't an apology, no.
Yeah, it wasn't an apology. How did they frame that to you, and how did that come about?
So basically, that's Margaret Sullivan, who is the public editor for the New York Times, so just sort of like an ombudswoman it's essentially called elsewhere. But she sort of public editor is a title. I'm not sure when it was created, but sort of be the voice of the readers. And so when they thought that after all of this, Twitter stuff had blown up about it on Friday night, which is well after the article came out, by the way, when it sort of suddenly became a Twitter firestorm, she felt I know she felt obligated to, and we can get more into that part of it later about how it all sort of, I think, fell apart online. When she got looped into it, she contacted me saying, "Hey, I'm going to write about this. Would you be up for talking?" And I said, "Sure." And I was actually standing in Heathrow Airport on the phone on my way, about to get on the plane home, talking about this article with her. And then later she talked to the head sports editor, Jason Stallman, as well about it. And she just sort of wrote her feelings on it, which I mostly don't entirely agree with. I understand she's calling it a missed opportunity to, dig deeper about these issues, or sort of challenge the norms. But as Jason was on NPR earlier, I'm losing track of days with this because it's been exhausting. I think it was yesterday, saying, or maybe it was this morning, I'm not sure. He said that the New York Times taking a stand against an advocating position would go against the 150 years of reporting we've done. I mean, and sort of, my story was in some ways, cold and detached. I'm fine with that. It was not.
Unfortunately, I don't think that's how people perceived it, as cold and detached. I think it actually perceived it as kind of propagating a certain ideology. Do you know what I mean?
And to me, that was not my intention whatsoever. I don't know where I said that one thing was better than another in terms of how to look at it. That was not my, and I keep using the word intention. If that was not my intention, and if it came across that clearly to so many people, and I know that it didn't, because I've heard from a lot of people, emails, other colleagues, whoever, friends, who said, I see this I read this article and I don't understand it at all. It was not a universally held thing. Like you said, for better or for worse, people look at this article and see different things. They take their own perspectives into it and come to very different conclusions about the article. But for me,
so you weren't fully comfortable with some of the claims that came out of that second piece.
No, I disagreed with it. I mean, obviously it's her space on the paper to say what her opinion is, and it's very much an opinion part of the section from her. I completely disagreed with the academic she cited, who said that I compared Serena to like some sort of beast or some like animal-like person, or that I dehumanized her in any way as part of this tradition of people dehumanizing her forever. I think that was completely not in this piece at all.
Can I ask if she's black or white?
She's white.
I think she's white, this academic. Yeah, I believe so. Pat Griffin. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Oh, no, Margaret Sullivan.
No, the person who wrote it.
No. Okay, sorry.
Margaret Sullivan, the ombudswoman, is white.
Okay.
The woman who she cited, I've never seen her. I'm not sure.
Were any of the editors who edited your piece, were they persons of color?
To be perfectly honest, I'm not sure. The two people who I know looked at it are my normal Tinus editor, Nyla. She's a person of color. She's half Filipino. And so that's somewhat a person of color, for not obviously black.
Ben, you are so going to catch hell for just calling someone somewhat a person of color. Just so you know, be ready.
Just so you know.
That was not us, people, but you were controversial, but we don't go down that route.
Oh, shit.
Person of color. It's like filling out the census. Yeah, we all understand.
It's okay.
The census only cares if the person is Latina. So, but no, I mean, I think those are fair points. I mean, it's interesting to note that you really disagreed with this sort of second piece.
I stand by what I wrote. I do. It's through all of this. I still am glad the piece got written. If it had to come out not at all, or in the form it's in now, I'm glad it came out.
Would you change anything about it? Would you change if you had a do-over?
Sure. No, I think that I would address some of the I wouldn't change the course of the piece drastically, not at all. But throwing in a line that addresses intersectionality, as you said. If you want to talk about Serena's different opposites, even just one line about that, I think would be fine. Or talk about how Serena, the person who Serena emulated body-wise, or envied, was Venus. She's talking about that.
We all do.
We all
sure. And so that I think would make it sort of clear that it wasn't, totally just white girls talking about black girls and black girls talking about white girls, whatever it was.
Yeah.
You know, that there are body types come in different shapes and sizes. There are other things that I can include, but they're mostly, honestly, fairly minor. I understand that other people would want the piece to be different ways, and I look forward to reading everyone else's piece about it being however they want to write it. Seriously, every piece that's come out in response to it, obviously some of them have been, I think, completely unfair or knee-jerk reactions saying body shaming, whatever.
What were the top 3 things that you found most egregious in terms of critiques of the piece for you?
Okay, the number one, that's a good question, because I've definitely been ranting about this for a while. The most sort of like, obviously some of them are just anonymous tweets from people who I don't know who they are. And
they're called trolls. You can say
no,
that.
trolls. Obviously, one of the things that I found most over the line was somebody who tweeted me pictures of posters that were used advertising slave auctions, and said that my piece read just like a poster advertising the characteristics of a slave, and that I was selling Serena as a slave.
Wow.
That I thought was completely obviously not there.
Because of the juxtaposition.
And because of the
a lot more than juxtaposition.
Because of the overt description in the beginning, right? Because of the overt description of her body in the beginning, which I think in some ways can be triggering when to hear someone's body described in that way.
Wow.
But I was describing it. I mentioned her large biceps in just following why she wears long sleeves. That's the only reason those came in for particular mention.
That's really wild.
Because they were good for, you know, cotton picking, like you said, or whatever.
that was the critique, I remember.
Yeah, no, I mean, so that was not in my piece. So there are things like people just took it and just seemed to be trying to do this one-upmanship of outrage.
And number 2?
Which comes in on. I mean, there were just people saying. I had people saying that and this is obviously some of these are fair and people have their own perspectives. People saying it was transphobic, which I just don't think is on the table at all for this article. But I understand if you want to take several leaps and get it there.
How? Because I don't get it.
I don't get that.
I don't get that one.
We understand. Oh, okay. Well,
I guess people are saying that for me to propagate this notion, which I don't think I was propagating, I was just pointing out that it's still there, that, you know, women look a certain way. Again, this is all me speculating because I did not obviously follow the person, saying that I don't know that if you are a trans woman who once was a man and you have a certain build that looks manly, then you're not a woman.
Yes,
I guess.
because that is a critique of trans people. So and so I mean, these are all in line with the description in the beginning. That even though you are presenting it as kind of flat and direct in your mind, just sort of factual, there are these layers of meaning that are being attributed to it. Which
people are bringing their own perspective, their own lenses. People see the world through different things. And I was listening to this other podcast, the Body Serve, which talked about it for a while. And it's 2 guys. One of them is, I think, Jamaican originally, or half part Jamaican, West Indies somewhere.
Yeah.
You 2 are friends, I see. And so he goes. So I think his partner on the podcast was talking about it, saying the first time I read it, you know, I didn't see. I think I assume this guy's white. I'm not sure. Said I didn't see race in it at all. And then you told me there was race all over it, and then I went back and looked, and I was like, wow, so much race. Like, if you're told to look for something,
like I said,
you can find it. And that's why
race. We don't see race. We don't.
Can I ask?
No. I think
wait.
the one thing
Sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
The one thing I will say is that was what sort of snowballed on Twitter. Is that once one person, there was this really blunt tweet in the New York Times account, and then people started tweeting it, like copying the link and saying, look at this racist, sexist garbage. And all the people who clicked on it from there went there looking for racist, sexist garbage. And we're coming into
because they had a preconceived notion
of what was in there. Yeah, no, and that's where it snowballed, and that's where I think that it got somewhat out of control. But I understand it. I'm not saying anybody who came to that conclusion is completely, you know, an idiot, or, you know, I respect people who have different life experience. I respect people who have different challenges they face in the world and see the world therefore through different lenses. I get all of that. One thing people have said about me in the aftermath of this, or listening to NCR, is saying, like, I'm not trying to learn anything from this. Like, that's not true at all. Like, I've talked to people as much as I can to understand where the reaction comes from and learn all about the different intersectionalities and different perspectives people have had. I'll use the word intersectionality in my juxtaposition for this episode.
That's word of the day.
My word of the day. And By the way, speaking of words of the day, the one word that I learned from this, which I did not know, was this word misogynoir,
Yes.
which is this academic portmanteau of combining like black with misogyny. I just think that's sort of a cool sounding word, and I think people want to try to find ways to use it in conversation because it's just
I don't know about that. I mean, I think.
Oh my God!
Wow, wait a minute.
You
Know what? Calling on the body stuff because that's where I heard it.
I don't know that word.
It's a great word, and it's a good word to know because I think as Serena continues on her race to the career Grand Slam, we will discover that.
The calendar slam.
The calendar slam. The calendar.
I'm twice.
And when it comes to New York,
she's won 3 career slams.
Yes, she's won 3 career slams. But if she gets this calendar slam, misogynoir will no longer be a new word for you. I mean,
it's already not a new word anymore. I've already heard it several times.
Yeah, but I mean, I do think it's a fair thing to note. You know, I think one of the things that, Ben, for me, you know, my takeaway from this is that you could do an article with all white women, and I think people are just ready to come to it in a certain way.
Yeah. No, I think even if it had been an article that had Radwanska on top.
Yeah.
Even if it had been an article, if Aga Radwanska had won the 3rd set of her semi against Muguruza instead of falling apart, I wouldn't have all these problems in my life.
You know what? I just have one quick question about the order of the article because you talked about how it was changed last minute. Who changed it?
I mean, it was last minute in the sense of like it was done and then it wasn't like we were like racing against a deadline. That would be you know.
Oh yeah, but I'm just curious to know, was it an editor? Was it you who said
it was it was an editorial decision that I agreed with that to have it come out. We said, well, we could hold it till like the US Open, but that seemed like not necessary, and especially with Serena still being a big part of the article and still being in the tournament. We thought the article was totally ready to be changed, and that we could change it with little restructuring, and that's maybe where that's clearly obviously where people think
Ben,
we fell short.
How'd that work out for you?
Not so hot. but like I said, through all of this, people have been asking when I'm going to apologize, and I don't think I'm going to apologize. I'm not apologizing for this.
I don't think you have I personally, I don't think there is a need to apologize. I mean, what would you even apologize for? I think that some things could have been done differently, but I don't think that necessarily warrants an apology, but that could come from the fact that I don't, you know, from the way that I read the article.
Go for it.
The rest of you can weigh in that. Should I apologize? Let me hear your thoughts.
I mean, like, Mike, honestly, I've read the article several times. I am still unclear as to exactly what it is you were trying to do. And what the article is trying to do. I mean,
you want to start over?
No, wait, don't get me wrong. When you're talking to me, I get what you're telling me.
Yeah,
but
sure.
it wasn't communicated in the article.
But it's not being communicated in the article. Because I am left.
And I think that's what, Ben, honestly, that's what you should apologize for. You should apologize because...
For having stupid editors.
No. Honestly, you should apologize for the fact that people... For the fact that the intention of your piece was completely lost. And that was the job of your editor to anticipate the fact that an intersectionality response would come, and that they should say, you know what, Ben? Your larger point is being lost. So, because if you know, think about the conversation we just had.
That seems more like an admission than, and I'm happy to acknowledge that people think the point was lost, but I'm not apologizing.
Oh,
I'm just saying, like, sorry, I wrote a crappy article. My deepest condolences to you for having to read it. I've written much
Get to the writer.
You could do that. You could say no, because you know what? Because Ben, I think one of the things you pointed out in your personal podcast, which is that you said, should the article be able to stand on its own without knowing you and knowing your intentions? Yeah. And I have to say, I don't think it does. And I think part of the reason why we could approach your article in a certain way is because we have a history with you. We know you love the WTA. We actually know you quite enjoy Serena Williams. So we have that context. And we also have the context of the other players. So we knew it was sort of challenging and even quite revolutionary to get them to admit those things.
Yeah,
so,
no, and I got
you know what I mean?
You guys were ones who spent very little time evaluating the quality of the article, and got right to the sort of actual content of it, which I hugely appreciated because so few people were doing that.
Right. I mean, and that happens a lot on Twitter. Twitter, only, I tell you.
We have a lot of time.
Twitter, brevity is not just. I'm telling you, on Twitter, I always say Twitter is not just the brevity is not the source of wit. It's also the source of confusion.
Yeah.
Because 150 characters can blow people's fucking minds. They don't have time for the story. They don't have time for the story. They just have time for
the first negative tweet I saw, because I usually when a piece goes out, I search. This is not always for better, obviously, but I usually search just the URL on Twitter of the article, and you can find everyone who's linking it. And one of the first people who, like, early on, before the wave came later that day, who said something negative about it, said, like, "Oh my God, this makes me so angry. I can't even. This is terrible. How dare you, New York Times?" And then someone said, like, "Well, what is it about?" And she's like, "Well, I don't know. I just skimmed through it, but it seems bad."
I didn't actually read it, but fuck this.
You have the time to send an outraged tweet before you have the time to read it. It says a lot about
Funnily enough, I read the article, I tweeted the article, and my tweet, I remember my tweet.
Yeah, so did I tweeted it too.
Really nice article, but
Thank you.
It has left me feeling really sad.
And I did the same thing. I tweeted it out and I said something along the lines of interesting article, body feminism is a real challenge, or something along those
Well,
lines.
I felt really sad too. I felt really sad that this woman with amazing legs talks about she wants less cellulite. I felt sad that Caroline Wozniacki had the audacity to say, if I want to be model-like, I'll slim down later. If I have to be bulky now to play my sport, okay. And I'm like, why can't you be beautiful both ways? I mean, I want to take her by the shoulders and shake the shit out of her and say, it's all beautiful, Caroline. It's all good,
And
you know?
Those are the
Be
kind of
a
reactions.
woman.
Those are the kind of reactions that I wanted. This is not a happy story. This story. It's not a story that's supposed to. I did a radio show, it's called on XM station called like Urban View, I think, or something like that. It's an African American centric show with that kind of audience. And one of the things that I think it was a caller said that the article, like, it's taking calls, which was scary because who knows where those are going to go. Said that, like, the article did nothing to lift up black women, and, like, for me, like, that wasn't my job. Like, it wasn't.
Obviously,
and I agree with
as
that.
a black woman, I have already told you that didn't work that way. That I felt good about it, and I felt like it was uplifting.
And but even still, it's not an article that, well, thank you, first of all, Janine. I just think that, you know, this is not it's not a positive story necessarily. It's a story that these women still do have this problem, this hang-up that we wish they didn't. You know, we wish this wasn't a problem. We wish that it was that women didn't have to deal with things men don't have to deal with. The other criticism that I got, a couple more that I'll just address quickly, just so I get my grievance list of all the different things people have said. People have said that, like, oh, this would never be written about Djokovic. Like, damn right it wouldn't be written about Djokovic, because Djokovic doesn't have to care about this shit.
Well,
I mean,
if they want to hear shit about Djokovic, they need to tune in here, because I've got plenty to say about the Serbian devil.
And they can do that, and I'll recommend they do that. But in terms of, someone rewrote the article with just pretty lazily, just sort of inserting the names of NFL players on top of the women's names and changing, like, Wimbledon to Super Bowl or something. And they just did it to show how ridiculous it would look, and it would look ridiculous because it's a double standard. And I'm not saying that it should be the same that it is the same for men and women. I'm sorry that women have it harder. That's not my fault. Like, I'm not the one who introduced this concept of women having body standards that men don't. I obviously realize that my body is scrutinized, even though I would love to be objectified by everybody in the world on some level. I'm not, and I get that. And it's not fair. It's not right. The last thing, just so I finish my checklist, is people saying that having this article come out the day before Serena's thing, like, stole her glory, stole her moment whatsoever. Like, first of all, I had no sense that it would blow up into this kind of thing. I've never had this happen before, so I wasn't, like, being like, ooh, I got this story, it's going to take away Wimbledon from Serena. Like, no, it was just a story that happened to come out that day. And also, that's how journalism works with timing. I mean, you saw, like, I don't know if anyone read it, ESPN, some army ESPN, I want to say Outside the Lines or something, did this massive investigation to Hope Solo and the abuse charges. And they did this whole long thing which they're working on. And they dropped it or they put it online the day before the Women's World Cup started, which to me is far more of a torpedoing anything that this was trying to be. And that's just how journalism works. You write about things and people when they're relevant. It was the women's final at Wimbledon is a big timing event for women's tennis. It's the biggest women's tennis match of the year. And so having an article about women's tennis timed around that, I'm sorry that I'm a party pooper for some people or something, but that's really not my concern as a journalist. So that's it. I think I got everything off my chest now. So now
all right.
Did any of the women that you interviewed contacted you about this? Did you get any reaction from the players in the article?
No, not until very recently, and I haven't had a chance to respond to that person, so I'm gonna decline that question.
Okay, so you did, but you're not going to talk about it.
I'm sorry.
So you did, but you're not going to talk about it tonight, and that's fair.
Yeah, I'll say that.
I was about to say something, Janina, which I thought was gonna give us the tea, but apparently.
No, but you know what? I did wonder about that though, Ben, because the question I was thinking that the women were going to be more hesitant sharing their, sort of their inner thoughts because of the way, again, the juxtaposition. So now it's like their quotes.
Can that please be the episode title of this show, by the way?
Abso-fucking-lutely.
And I had it as, straight from the horse's mouth, but apparently no, that's not gonna be it anymore.
But, I mean,
it's juxtaposition.
Okay, that's fair enough. All right, that makes sense. All right.
So, Ben.
Thank
you.
Oh, no problem.
I thought we were going to ask about the gossip.
Well,
give us some gossip.
There's always one bomb dropped at the end of a podcast, and then it's up to you to drop a blind item.
Yes.
This is our blind gossip section.
Yeah.
Blind item.
Make it good.
Blind item. Okay.
Blind item.
I'm tough with coming up with these things myself. Like, give me more of a topic, more of a person.
Anything.
Actually, you know what? I have one. It's Sergei Stakhovsky's assertion that there are no gays in the top 100 in the back.
Good question.
Is he for real? Is that true?
I will say that I know of no confirmed players who are gay in the top 100.
Damn.
ATP top 100. ATP top 100.
That tells me that claim is not okay.
However, I'm not done. However, there is one player. I'm not going to say names. No, that's not happening.
Don't say names.
No, that's the blind item. Yeah.
But it's just blind. But there was a story I heard about players sitting around at a tournament. Like, it was right when Jason Collins came out.
Yeah.
Like that week or something. And them it was like a rain delay, so there were like all these players in this player lounge.
Shut it, Reels.
And there were all these players in this player lounge, and they were sort of saying, like, who do you think might be gay on tour? And they came to a pretty immediate unanimous consensus.
Nice. Okay. Well,
and so
Sergey,
they all have those people, and I don't know.
Was this someone in the top 100?
Someone currently top 100, yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thanks for the bomb.
Oh, Lord. Stop yourself.
Well, if it gotta be blind, we gotta have more information, right? I can't be fishing through.
We don't get more information.
We have it. Top.
However, that should all that is people's gaydar, and with how much time with how insular these boys are in their culture and how little they get out. I don't think there's necessarily the best calibrated gaydar in the world.
Yes, I don't doubt that. Sergei Stakhovsky has clearly not been outside.
So before you go, Ben, because I'm all about the WTA.
Of course.
I want to pick up my racket.
Okay.
And start playing again because Sergey says that the top 100 is filled with lesbians. Is that true?
I gotta say, I wanted to have Sergey on my podcast for a while, just because we always have people.
We do too.
I mean, you might do it. We always have people on the show who I really like for the most part, and I kind of want to change that. I want it to be someone who just to be interesting, to have someone who I disagree with constantly on the show.
I find him so disagreeable that I actually find him fascinating.
I totally get that, so I would say what I would do for Sergey.
You love to hate.
I would print out the WTA top 100 and say, "Here, Sergey, here's a pen. Circle the 50 lesbians for me. Go for it, and see what he does with it." I mean, honestly, like, the
These
sort
are
of
people who've rejected him apparently, so he'll just go down the list of people who said no.
You
Exactly. They
all
were like,
50
we
of
want
those?
none of that.
No.
Yeah, I mean, Sergey, I, as a writer, I appreciate Sergey's lack of filter.
Of course.
Because
of
Sergey
course.
is speaking what he thinks is the truth. And
Yes.
that's all I want from an athlete, is to sort of let people know what they
Speak the
think.
truth.
I bet you get great quotes.
I do. I mean, like, I don't know if you, but at the same time, he's never relevant. So it's
No,
hard to, like,
no.
put him in
He
stories
was
and
strong.
True.
Well, Federer made him relevant for about 10 seconds.
Oh my gosh, he was so enjoying being relevant that day. That was the most. I can tell you, that was the most insufferable press conference I've ever been to. With Stakhovsky after being Federer, he was like on cloud 9. And this is not me. I don't. Maybe this is spilling tea on some level, but that was a universal opinion in that room.
Of
People
course.
were there saying like, "Who does this guy
Dude.
think?" And,
Is
like
that
I
any
said,
less than Seppi?
I'm glad he's on the tour because he is someone who is unfiltered and makes it, you know. Is a
He's an
character.
insider, though. He's an insider.
Yeah.
I think I like that because he's having conversations and he spills the tea on his colleagues. That's
Yeah,
what he does.
and he's not afraid. He's not as concerned as he might be with self-preservation in terms of, you know.
He doesn't have any sponsors, so what are you gonna worry about?
Sponsoring him.
No.
Chewing gum to the man from around the corner, his neighbor.
No, it's great. You need those people. You need those people.
Scrub.
No.
It's scrub, 100% scrub. I mean, like, you just,
All right, we need those people. Okay, thank you so much
for being on our podcast, Ben. We really, really appreciate
No,
it.
thank you guys for having me. I would love to do it again sometime. And like I said, like
Yeah.
I mean, we wound up talking about me and my article the whole time. But anything you guys want to know, anytime, I'm
Yes.
happy to
Spilling the tea.
talk about. And yes, I'll brew some more tea for you for next time.
Yeah, exactly. As in, you're suspicious where Sergey got it wrong.
Oh gosh, honey, leave it alone. Leave it alone.
I won't say. Do you guys have immediate while we're drinking our tea Kermit style here? Do you have any immediate guesses on this front? Is there someone who you're thinking, or do you have no idea?
Rafa.
I'm surprised you didn't say no, as you hate him so much.
I don't think Nole's gay. I think he's very much a womanizer, fucktard. But
Ooh.
I'm gonna go with Rafa.
Okay.
I have 10 I would like it to be.
Can I just say, Janina, on that front,
Yes.
what I thought was so funny about what Stakhovsky said is that, first of all, he was like, well, we thought Rafa was gay, we thought Gasquet was gay. Like, he's just like throwing all these other guys onto the bus along the way. Not that obviously thinking someone is gay is a horrible thing to say.
I know. That's what I thought was
That was
funny.
the sloppiest part of that whole quote.
But here's the thing. I don't care about the gay men. What do I care about the gay men for? I
Well,
care
I
about the
love
gay
it.
women. They're the only ones that are going to give me some action.
I love it.
Woman, yeah.
I want a gay man on tour because first of all, I want the camera to span to his boyfriend, and I want him to bring a hot boyfriend because that's the only point. You got to have a hot girlfriend or boyfriend. That's how the tour works. So, I want the guy to be out. I want him to be winning things. I want him to maybe even party. I want the whole thing up there. I think it'd be fabulous.
It would be tremendous, and it would be totally good for the sport, and especially because tennis has such a
think
massive
so.
gay following. I mean, like,
It does.
tennis, of sports that are not judged with like an artistic score,
Yes.
tennis has like one of the biggest gay percentage followings of any sport.
But
Exactly.
you don't know how much, which is funny because you don't know how much of the gay community hate to hear people say that players could be gay.
Because then their hopes are dashed.
They get upset that when people say that players could be gay. It only in their minds, no one in the top. Once you get to the top 10, you cannot be gay. Oh no, no one
What's
in the
wrong
top
with you
10
and your gay
cannot
friend?
be gay.
Why?
Oh, because they don't want to. They don't want to have their hearts broken. Come
Because
on.
I mean, tennis players and athletes in general epitomizes what we think of the glory standard of specimen of body, warrior, everything is it's where we can kill someone without actually having to kill that person. Look how people behave about Serena and Maria Sharapova. You think they're out there literally pulling each other's hair out.
Well, I believe Maria might be pulling people's fucking hair out, but anybody else, I don't think so.
She's mostly pulling her hair out when she's playing Serena.
Alrighty.
So
Okay.
thank you again, Ben. We'll definitely have you on our show. Definitely write more crazy articles, and stir
Well,
up Black Twitter.
I would love it. I want to put it out there that if Serena does complete her career slam, we would love to have you on to talk about the significance of it and what do you think it'll mean for the sport
Sure.
in the U.S. particularly.
And even if you fail at doing it, you should come on as well at that time and let us know how your heart has been broken.
We'll wait afterwards. We'll do World Tour Finals or something. But I'm just saying, if it happens.
If my heart has been broken by Serena winning, you're saying?
No.
If she doesn't win the career slam.
Oh.
The calendar slam.
Calendar slam. You know what? Honestly, what I wanted at the beginning of the year was for somebody to win the first two. Anybody, man or woman, to win the first two. So we finally got. That hadn't been done since Capriati, which is ridiculous because Rafa was hogging up all those French Opens and never winning Australia. And the 1 year he won Australia was the 1 year Soderling came along. It's just such a ridiculous timing.
Soderling's like a happy holiday for us.
All I wanted was
you wanted a double. You wanted an Aussie French double.
And then we get Wimbledon, and it's even better. Honestly, if it gets finished or not, whatever. On some level, honestly, for me, the U.S. Open is almost the least important of the four. I'm just so excited. We go in there with this opportunity, with this attention on tennis, with this spotlight. I think it's amazing for the sport. If she gets it, if all the confetti comes down on the end for her, great. If not, it was still an incredible moment for her to get the attention and adulation she deserves. All these people are writing about Serena because she's doing something remarkable, because she's on the doorstep of history. Whether or not she walks through, I mean, that will change, obviously, long-term her legacy. But for right now, short-term for tennis, just the three is unbelievable.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
4 in a row again.
Haters gonna hate.
And seeing how much attention there has been on it lets us know kind of how much we've missed this in the sport, not having it for 14 years, especially with people coming so close. We've had Federer, we've had Nadal, we've had Djokovic all win 3 slams in a year. Recently, Federer did it 3 times, I think, but they never got the first 2 together, and it's just like we could have had so much more hype for it, because it's like the horse racing Triple Crown. Like when the person is when the horse is 2/3 the way there, everybody watches the 3rd race. It's just how it works, even if it's dumb horse racing.
It's supposed to be hard. That's why.
Well, let's just hope the dumb horse doesn't get
the WTA.
The big war of the year.
No, like I said, Serena is our best bet to save us from the horse.
I hope.
It's September. I can assure you of that.
Let's hope she doesn't get vetoed. Okay.
All right.
There we go.
Thank you again, and ladies and folks, don't forget to tweet us, comment on Facebook, on the blogs, and somewhere else. You can email me as well. God, I don't know. It's getting late.
It's late.
Over now.
You know
Good
what?
night,
Just find us. Goodbye.
Bye. Good night. Thanks
Bye,
again.
guys. No problem. Thanks for having me, guys.
Bye.
Bye.